Hello and welcome back or welcome to the Meta Performance Podcast, where we bring stories of high performers and type A plus people getting after it in all aspects of work, sport, and life. And today I have the pleasure of bringing Prasanth Nair to the podcast for the listeners. Prasanth is really one of the most remarkable people I've ever had the pleasure of meeting. He is not only brilliant and sharp, but a very loyal family man, an amazing multi-sport athlete, and really somebody that is constantly challenging themselves to be the best version they can be in all aspects of life, which is exactly why I wanted to pick his brain and have him on the podcast. And with that, Prasanth, I'll pass it to you.
Holly, thanks for having me on here. It's really an honor to be on your podcast. So yeah, to people that are listening, my name is Prasanth Nair. I'm the CEO of a company called Double Gemini. We're a productivity company. We focus on core productivity. I have developed a handful of productivity techniques, some of which have become quite popular. One of them, the stackmethod.com. The Stack Method is a technique on email management, which you can find at stackmethod.com. Over 175,000 people have come and learned the Stack Method from that site. It's all for free. What motivates me is taking complex things and simplifying them so that other people can move forward. And I just gain an immense amount of satisfaction from seeing other people succeed. Other than that, I live in Long Island. I have 4 kids and I really enjoy triathlon. So I just finished my 15th Ironman 70.3 a month ago to the date, and in California. That's a little bit about me.
Excellent. And I'm sure the listeners can understand exactly, again, why I wanted to have you as a guest, because father of 4, endurance athlete, and then CEO of a company whose whole ethos is on helping people perform, basically helping them be efficient and effective in how they show up. And I do urge our listeners to go to stackmethod.com because it's very fascinating and truly brilliant to not only learn, but experience the tools and product suite that you've put together. And I'm really curious as we kind of dive in and take our conversation here. How do you personally define high performance?
I define high performance as the ability to be fully engaged on a task at hand. It doesn't matter if you're have a desk job or if you're an athlete. And so when I say fully engaged, it means that to me, high performance means that you can apply all of your physical and mental and spiritual energy on the task at hand. You have the ability to be in the zone at the thing that you're doing at that moment. And I think it's really important. I think a lot of people, when they think about high performance, they focus on the macrocosm. And I think it's really important to focus on the microcosm, because if you can solve for a single instance or a moment, then you can typically, and you can do it on a repeatable basis, you know how to get there, then you can solve it for everything. If I took some examples of that, for example, let's say you've got somebody that's working at a desk job and they got assigned to build a presentation. So they sit down to work on the presentation and they're completely distracted by all of the thoughts that are coming their way. They hobble through an hour of work on the presentation. They're making very little progress. That's not high performance. And if they can't operate with a certain level of concentration and focus for that task, what does it mean for the rest of their week? What does it actually mean for the rest of their life? And in general, if you even think about that. And you can see this with athletes as well. I was watching basketball game. It's like 2 or 3 nights ago, Knicks game. And there was an inbound pass. And the person that was passing the inbound pass wasn't concentrating, didn't throw it well. The person that was supposed to be the recipient of the pass wasn't in a good enough position to catch the pass and wasn't even paying attention as the pass was coming in. So both of those people weren't fully engaged with the task at hand. Of course, it results in a turnover and the ball's going the other way. And so, yeah, I think it's the ability to be fully engaged. This is bringing up one other thought. So just in my last triathlon that I was doing, I was in the swim, and years ago, when I get in the swim, I would be frazzled. I would be another 1,000 people in the water next to you. The water's cold there. It's like 59 degrees. I'd be panicking and I'd struggle sighting the buoys. And, I didn't have that experience, not only this past race, but the last several races. And this race was probably my best swim yet. I was able to be fully present, know where I was in the water, see other people coming, stick to my foundations and techniques, and really just do beelines for every single one of the buoys. And so, so that's what I mean by high performance. Now, I think that if you can operate with high performance in the microcosm, then you can be a high performer. And individuals and teams that can orchestrate high performance hour after hour, day after day, week after week, and so on, they're the ones that are really high performers. And with one little caveat that I want to throw in, that when people talk about high performance or high performance, they're often thinking about it in comparison to other people. And I don't think about it that way. I think about it in comparison to myself and my capabilities. Everybody has got different talents and skills that they're bringing to a situation, right? And different backgrounds and baggage and all sorts of things, right? For example, I'm working on crafting a brand new video series. I may not be the best writer, right? But if I can concentrate and be fully engaged in the writing process, and I've booked myself an hour and a half every day to write, day after day, week after week, I can have a high performance week and I can be a high performer because I'm doing the best that I can with respect to my abilities, not in comparison to other people and situations. So a few thoughts on
a lot.
Yeah,
a lot there. And I mean, again, why having conversations with you is always so fascinating to me, because you float at a different altitude and you think micro and macro, but you're also mentioning processes here that support high performance. Like you said, you block time, right? So again, built a business on helping people find a process to help encourage efficiency and flow, or in the zone, right? Zone method. And that's how we met. I was working with the COO forum and you gave a presentation on the zone method. And I was like, this guy's an athlete. Just from the way you were talking, I was like, this guy knows endurance. I could just tell by your vernacular and the process, the system, what you were displaying. So I'm curious there. It sounds like anybody can become a high performer with how you're defining it. How do you know when you're performing well?
So I think that if I'm approaching things with enthusiasm, but I'm still mentally calm, when I feel grounded and in control and I can think with clarity, then I know that I'm performing well. If I'm frazzled, if I'm anxious, if I'm stressed, if I've got a lot of things coming my way, if I can't concentrate, then I can't be a high performer. And that applies to sitting down and writing a document, or when I'm running or swimming or biking or playing basketball, anything. I think that the ability to stay level mentally and be able to bring all of your facilities into play on the task at hand.
So it sounds great. I'm sure everybody listening is like, yes, that sounds amazing. But how do you do it? I mean, driving will basically turn me into somebody else. 9 times out of 10, I become a different version of myself, which, by the way, I'm not proud of. But we have distractions. We have emails. We have messages. We have our phones. We have everything pulling us sideways. So what's your tip or technique, kind of, best prompt to help people be able to bring all of their faculties to the present moment, to the task at hand?
So one of the biggest obstacles to being present is the sea of floating commitments that ends up occupying your consciousness. And you're trying to work on one thing, but you're thinking about 10 other things. Even the driving example, you're focused on driving and getting to somewhere, but you're thinking, I'm rushed because of this thing. I've got 10 other, things that I got to get done. I just need to get past this guy. This guy's driving like 1 mile an hour, right? Or you're sitting down to, exactly. Yeah. I've been there. And I think the same thing is true. You're trying to sit down, you're trying to work on something. Like how many times have you done that, right? Sit down to work on something and all these other thoughts and ideas are floating through your head. Now, when it comes to productivity, which I specialize in, I find that in order to be productive, you have to have systems that you can trust. And a system that you can trust has two aspects to it: the tools and the process component. The tools, that's the easy part, but the process is what I think provides the foundations necessary to be able to focus on at that moment on the thing that you're trying to do. Here's a very simple concept. So I have a methodology called the Zone Method. I'm going to be releasing some software on it publicly in a few months. Most people, if you look at their calendars have a handful of meetings and then a bunch of wide open spaces. They get to Monday and they're just looking at their task list and trying to orchestrate it. And then they leave work frustrated, didn't get everything done. They go to Tuesday, they got another handful of things, and they're just moving through. If one of the key practices that I do is I sit down on the Thursday or Friday of the week before, I empty my head of everything I could possibly think that I need to do. Then I group those things into meaningful groups, and then I create sessions on my calendar to get all those tasks done, whether they're personal tasks or home tasks or whatever it was. And through that process, I've identified all the things that I need to do, gotten it on my calendar. My calendar kind of looks insane to a lot of people, but it's fully booked. Even into the evenings, I can see all the things, whether it's hanging with the kids or watching a movie or taking the kids ice skating or doing all my work stuff, right? Or training even, and especially. So, but through that process, I've made a conscious decision of what I'm doing, but I've also made a conscious decision of what I'm not going to do. And because I wrote down everything and decided not to do those things, they're not occupying my consciousness. And also because my calendar is booked, I know how I'm going to spend my time, what I can accomplish, and I've got a forward-looking view. I'm not reactively dealing to every day and every week and every minute. I mean, think about all the stress that creates, right? I'm proactively orchestrating my weeks. It means that when I get into a particular session, like even this session with you, I don't have to think about other things. I know that this is what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm doing the right thing at the right time, and there's nothing else in my consciousness that's making me think otherwise. So that's how you do it. I think process is how you become a high performer.
A really brilliant, smart, and I would say simple but not easy process, because it's not just calendar management and time management, it's mental management.
Mm. Yeah, it's mental management. And, I might be selling some of this stuff short a little bit. Productivity, and especially performance, because that's what really productivity comes down to, is performance. I think that there's something that I consider a productivity pyramid. And on the base level of that pyramid is your foundational stuff. It's managing your energy, being fit and strong. A lot of us have really sedentary jobs. So it's really important, if you want to be productive, that you've taken that first level, that base level, and you're strong there. Then you can start getting into the other levels, with process being another aspect of your productivity, right? So the physical level, then the mental level, and then you're getting into process and being able to focus on the actual techniques that you need to follow so that you can actually be productive at that moment, following techniques like we're talking about with the Zone Method. So I think there's a little bit more there.
Yeah. So I think that's a natural segue to talk about training, since you mentioned it. And yes, training is in the calendar. It's prioritized for you. How has the focus and the mental discipline that training requires, right? Because we're not just talking about training for general fitness, which is all well and good. We're truly talking about training, and training is different than fitness. And when you're in the pursuit of a 70.3 half Ironman training goal, there does require a certain amount of course, physical, but also mental energy. So how do you transition from work to sport? And how are these processes and systems that you're talking about, how have they helped you in training?
So the question is, how does the things that I do, like in the systems and processes that I do in work, how they translate to sport and vice versa? So I think so let's talk about how sport has influenced work, and then we'll talk about the other way. So I think that, as I mentioned, I think that productivity is a pyramid. And in order to be able to concentrate and focus on the task at hand, like I have to be mentally strong. And it's much easier to be mentally strong when you're physically strong. There's a funny incident. In 2009, I finished the New York City Marathon, and I probably shouldn't have done it. Like I'd been training, and then I had a huge disruption from work, and I ran 3 times the month before the marathon. Then I was like, you know what? I'm just going to do this anyway. I signed up. I'll just see how it goes. I finished. And, but when I finished, I realized that my shoelaces were untied. It almost brought me to tears. And then I started laughing because I realized that if somebody told me at that moment, your shoelaces are untied, I would have had a breakdown. And what it made me realize is how much of my mental energy is dependent upon my physical energy and strength, how much of a foundation that it provides. And so I focus really heavily from a productivity perspective on managing my energy. Like I don't drink coffee. I stay hydrated. I work out in the morning, try to eat right, get enough sleep, all those like foundations. And I think that stuff, the discipline behind that has done a lot towards like enhancing my productivity. On the productivity side, I've always had an interest in improving things. And so I found a lot of, I'm a tinkerer. Like I'll work on something and I'll do it in a particular way. And then I'll realize, wait, maybe there's a better way to do it. And then I'll work on changing it. And that focus on continuously improving things has ended up helping me create or discover, I should say, some remarkable techniques in the productivity space. But it's also helped me tremendously on the sports side because I can apply those same principles into it. Focusing on swim technique, or like this past year, I dramatically changed my running technique and ended up with far less fatigue and running better splits, at least during training and practice, than I have over the last several years. So yeah, so I think there's a lot to the crossover. There's discipline in sport that has carried over to influencing how much discipline I have, like when it comes to work. There's another thing that's pretty interesting. Like in sport, like you have to do a lot of the foundational things, right? You have to do the stretching. You have to make sure you're eating right. Like you have to set yourself up to be successful foundationally. You have to start off slow, do your warm ups, like the things that you might not want to really do, but you have to do them if you want to perform well. And at work, there's the same kinds of things. Like you have to be able to dedicate time to do your planning for the week. You have to make sure that you're spending like your half an hour or hour a day to stay on top of your email communications. Like you have to do like the really basic things, the things that you don't want to do if you want to be effective. You have to prep agendas for meetings. No one likes to do that. It's not fun, but it's really important to handle all those foundational things. And you learn that from sport and it applies into work and life.
Yes, those like non-negotiable parts of activities to really usher in performance and sustainable performance. You know, maybe you don't love them, but they're helpful, especially when stacked consistently over time.
Yeah.
And just for the record, Meta Performance does not condone abstinence from coffee. We are coffee drinkers. That is not a Holly or Michael or Sean coaching modality for sure. That's personal preference. And, you know, you were mentioning body, fit, mind, and I kind of boiled it down in that way. But you notice how if you have a fit physical regimen or routine, that it helped you show up mentally as your best. And I've recently seen some scientific articles that have shown this to be true through empirical research, that cardiovascular and resistance training translates to actually seen and measured better leadership behaviors by peers or cohort, which I find amazing. And a lot of people, you know, we're recording this the beginning of January. A lot of people really sacrifice themselves when it comes to a corporate life or a business life or even a personal or family life, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if somebody's hearing this and they're feeling inspired, like, wow, you know, this makes sense. If I'm physically healthy, I can mentally be healthy and be more effective. But how do I get started? What advice would you have for somebody who's looking to level up their mental game by leveling up their fitness game?
Block an hour a day to exercise. and stick with a routine. I might even say, even before that, is potentially to have a goal. Now, if you don't know where you're going, how are you going to get there?
You'll go anywhere.
Go anywhere, yeah. You won't go anywhere, or you'll go someplace where you've never intended to go in the first place,
Right.
right? And so, like in sports, I sign up for races. Not that you need to sign up for a race, but have a goal. Pick a challenge. Like last year, I did a 100-day kettlebell swing challenge, where I was going to do 100 kettlebell swings a day for 100 days. And so I think that that's important. But I think that it's being consistent. An hour a day. If you can't do an hour a day, get a half an hour a day, but just make it a non-negotiable part of your life, and watch and wait and see what happens and what the result is. If I'm exercising every day, then um, my posture is better, my breathing is better, my blood circulation is better. It's a foundational habit that has a cascading effect. I tend to want to eat better. I sleep better. And when you're sitting there with a better posture at work and you're breathing better at work and you're physically stronger, then you can concentrate and deal with the challenges of work, not just like the tactical challenges of getting work done, but the psychological challenges that often happen in work environments with the people that we have to work with and often operate and deal with, or clients or customers or stakeholders, and unrealistic demands and all the other things that go along with it. So I think just really can do wonders for you. And if you're doing that, you're not losing time. I used to think that if I spend an hour a day, like, at the gym, like half an hour cardio, half an hour weights, then or 40 cardio and 20 weights, whatever it is, that I would be wasting a lot of time. But, I just want to dive in and get this project done. And like, once it's done, then I'm going to have accomplished X. It doesn't work like that. Life is a marathon. It's not a sprint. And so it's just very important to have that consistency if you want to have the long-term benefits. The other thing I'll say is, you don't have to go into every workout like expecting to be, especially if you're a little bit older, expecting to be what you were before. That's not the case. You can be your best you now, for your capabilities now. And you can exercise in a way that provides you a lot of satisfaction and joy without like trying to kill yourself. Like, there's so many people that I see in the gym that are just pushing zone 3 and zone 4 workouts. And like, you can stay in zone 2 and stay there consistently on your exercise, and, sprinkle a little bit of like challenging stuff, interval work. But same thing when you're lifting weights, you can just stay level and not burn yourself out with it. And all of it'll move you in the right direction.
Yes, I co-sign all of those things. And, it's frustrating to somebody like me in my position, where I see like the bright, flashy, shiny, spicy workouts are what gets attention, but it's really the boring consistency that's going to allow you to reveal your best self and help you become sustainably high performing over time. But kind of a part 2 question to you, Prasanth, is, again, all of this sounds great. Block an hour in my calendar. Okay, got it. Right. And I've seen this with individuals that I work with. Hey, block a time, recurring meeting, done. But then how do you actually maintain the discipline to do it? Because blocking the time and doing the thing, totally
Mhm.
focused on the thing, are two completely different tasks. So how have you cultivated this sense of discipline for yourself?
There's a lot to unpack there. So one thing is I'm going to give you a couple different answers. One thing is that I don't think that there's such a thing necessarily as willpower. Willpower suggests that you've got some reserve and you've got to go after this thing. And if you don't do it, you're a failure. Like, that's just a very harsh way to approach things. And most people that try to sustain things, especially over the long run with willpower, they don't get anywhere, at least based on my experience, what I've seen, and even just my own personal experience. I think that what gets people there is desire. And I think of, like, imagine you have a flask and it's got all these bubbles, and certain bubbles are floating to the top and only one can come out the top at a time, right? So your desire, the thing you desire most, is what's going to get prioritized, and it's going to get pushed out and pop out the top of that flask, right? And so one of the things that I found is that if I focus on the things that I care about and write down my desires, like, and especially the why behind them, and I keep those in focus, that I will naturally move in that direction over time. I do this little ritual on Fridays where I write down what worked, what didn't work, and then I review my goals. What are my goals? And so the actual way I do it is what worked, what could I improve on instead of what didn't work, and then what are my goals? What's interesting about that is I've done that for well over a decade. You write down all the things that are goals, and maybe at the beginning they were unattainable, but by keeping them in my consciousness, they became stronger and stronger desires to the point that they became part of my identity. And now I just can't operate. I think about myself in those ways. And so I am somebody that exercises every day, or consistently exercises. I am somebody that is on time to meetings. I am somebody that eats well. Like, that's who I am. So I think desire is one thing. I think there's another tactical answer to that. So there's a gentleman named Neil Fiore that wrote a book called The Now Habit. And what he found was that most people don't have a really good account of their time. And he has this thing called the uncalendar. I call it the shadow calendar. But the shadow calendar is dropping the kids off to work, waking up, that's a half an hour. Getting to bed, that's a half an hour. Eating lunch, that's a half an hour. Eating dinner, that's an hour. Going for your workout, answering emails, an hour, right? Like, once you start throwing in all the things that you got to do, you're going to realize that you have very little time. And a great exercise is to go to your calendar and put in as reoccurring time entries all of your shadow calendar items. Then when you make that list and you block time on your calendar, you're going to realize that you have very little time in totality for the things that you want to do. If you don't finish the things you're doing at work, it's going to bleed over into the evening, right? If you don't finish the things you need to do in the evenings, there could be other impacts in your life because of, the implications that are associated with it. So once you realize that, then you're far more compelled when you block an hour to do something, to do it because you realize that there's a trade-off. And if you have an open calendar, you have no plans or scheduling, there's never any trade-offs in your life. But for me, there's a trade-off. If I don't do XYZ task or project or whatever it is, then I'm not going to get to it. It's not like if I miss my workout this morning, my swim that I did this morning, I'm not getting to it later today, So I think that having that concept, it sounds like a negative type of motivation, but it provides it gives you a realistic view of your time and your commitments. And it helps me at least stay a lot more on track when I understand what the trade-offs are for the things that I'm not going to be able to get done.
Especially if it's your identity. Like you said, I am somebody that works out. I am somebody that eats well. And what you shared, I jotted it down, is desires or goals leads to motivation, which then leads to discipline. And over time, discipline creates identity, where it is not an idea or a hope for you to be this way. You are this way. It is your identity. And I think that's just so beautifully said. Simple, again, not easy, but truly attainable to anybody that might be listening to this and isn't living in the identity or living in the way that is aligned with them or that they want for themselves. And I know at Meta, a lot of times we start with loving kindness because oftentimes it comes from trying to shift the mindset and the mental story to a place of loving kindness so that we can compassionately move forward and create the identity for ourselves instead of approaching it with shame or blame or guilt or regret, which just adds baggage to the load, right? Because life is hard enough.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's so true, and it's really profound. Just keeping the thing or the person that you want to be, those goals, like in your consciousness and looking at it week after week. I remember I really wanted to drop some weight. And this was years ago when I was well over 200 pounds, which is hard for me to imagine myself at now. And but I wasn't doing actually anything progressing towards it, but I kept it in my consciousness as like, I'm somebody that eats healthy. Like, and that was my goal. I'm being someone that eats healthy. And then after a while, it starts making those like micro adjustments without you realizing it. And then I discovered fasting. And then I understood like various effects of like how the foods I eat like are operating on me. I became more and more consciously aware of those things. And then it's not like I was trying to be on a diet. I wanted to eat this way because it felt good and tasted good. And I felt great doing it. So yeah, just coming to it from that point, I love that loving kindness concept, because then you're coming to it from with like joy and curiosity and anticipation and without judgment, especially. And there's like, even when we were talking about high performance, like too many people are evaluating performance against other people. Don't stop it. Just evaluate it against yourself. And that's all that matters. And that's going to move you forward in a meaningful way.
Hands down. I mean, and we get this wrong as humans all the time because our brains are kind of designed for comparison, contrast, judgment, but self-judgment can just take away all of our joy and satisfaction in life if we let it. And I love that you've underscored and repeated through this conversation that it's you versus you. It's your life. It's your experience. It's your identity. It's your time. It's your energy. And that's everything. That's all that matters. You don't have to be any more or less for anyone else. It's only for your path.
Yeah. Interestingly too, I think that some of the highest performers, even like clutch performers, like Stephen Curry, right? I mean, what a clutch basketball player. If any of you get a chance, watch the like final 6 minutes of USA versus France in basketball from the Olympics last year. You'll literally be like stunned. But you know was really fascinating about that? He's not coming at that end of that game with anxiety or pressure, even though the fate of USA basketball is literally on his shoulders. He is taking those shots with joy. And he was celebrating it afterwards. It was something to watch, and not just watch from the physical or tactical act of him making literally insane shot after insane shot on tired legs after going through all these rounds to get to the gold medal game and playing against a tremendous French team. But the mental aspect of like him finding joy in that moment and channeling that joy onto the court, like that's what like I see the best athletes and performers do like over and over. Like there's Pavarotti. He did forget the name of it. Norsen. Anyways, if you look up, just type in Pavarotti operas and you'll find a short and of him singing this one really famous aria. And you'll see when he's doing it, like he's finding more and more joy. And then he hits this moment in this aria that's just, it's out of control. And that wasn't from pressure. Like he's standing in front of some immense audience in some concert hall, one of the best concert halls in the world, right? Probably. But he's coming at it from joy. And that's when you're really able to like explode into who you are and experience that for yourself. And then also potentially share it with the world.
I love that. And I completely agree. It's high performers aren't motivated typically by like demons in the closet or running from themselves. They're doing it from a sense of joy and love and compassion. Completely agree. So last question for you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious about your experience with coaching. How has being coached allowed you to perform at your best in work and sport?
Great question. So I coached myself and I just followed training plans for a long time. And then I came to realize that I just didn't know what I was doing and I needed help to take it to another level. And so I think that the one aspect is just the expertise to know what to actually do. Like my workouts, the ones that you had created for me, were totally different than the ones that I had done for myself. And also, your workouts were way more patient. They started me off slower, built me up slowly. Oh, they were focused on the long run. Like if I had a setback, you brought it back and then amplified. I would have just returned to like the previous levels, like, and probably pushed myself, injured myself, something, right? And so I think that made a huge difference. I think that having the right coach, especially one that's supportive, gives you a great outlook on how to approach sport in and of itself, that you can approach it from a place where you can be the best within yourself and how it's more important to be consistent than it is to excel at every workout or situation. So I think providing the right mental framework is really, really critical on coaching. I'll tell you a very quick story. I did singing lessons a few years ago for about 3 years. And I was a little bit nervous about it, but I wanted to learn how to sing a little bit better. So I took lessons, and my coach there, she didn't have me do all these practices and exercises like in traditional ways. And she focused on the whole experience being fun. And that wasn't my experience with music lessons when I was a kid. It was sitting in front of like Bach or Beethoven, like sheet music, and just like hammering it. And if I didn't get something wrong, I've got like my teacher like sitting there ready to chastise me. Like that didn't work out. So the mental thing was like super important. And then also just the accountability and helping push me further than I would have gone myself. There are so many workouts that you gave me where I was just like, I'm like, oh my God. But we'd built up to it. And then we got to this point where we're doing this like hour and a half, like crushing workout on the bike trainer, like at like running like at my peak. And normally I would have like bailed on that, but knowing that you're going to be looking at the stats and like, you're seeing my progress. I was just like, no, I'm going to do this. I'm not, and so I think that it helps on many different levels. So hopefully that answers that question.
It does. Yes. And thank you. A lot of high performers tend to be the kind that want to figure it out on their own and might even see working with a coach as, a crutch or a sign that they can't do it on their own. And, part of this podcast is bringing stories of exemplars like yourself and showcasing how they've become great, how they've been able to sustain high performance and the systems and support system around them that allow them to accomplish what they want to accomplish, focus on their priorities and their goals consistently over time, and maybe have some fun and enjoy it too.
Yeah.
So with that, go ahead. Any parting words? Go ahead.
No. I just wanted to say that I also even have a business coach. So not only on the athletic side, but even on the business coach, and I coach people. So I think it's very important. I agree with everything you said.
Any final words? Please tell people where they can find you and follow.
So, and with that, you can find me go to doublegemini.com if you want to see the full range of productivity services that myself and my team at our company offer. And from that site, you can view my various productivity practices on the Stack method, which is about email management, the Vision method on file management, the Unite method on meeting management, the Pulse method, which is the art of writing emails, and soon, in the next few months, the Zone method, which is going to provide free videos and software for time management. And you can also find my LinkedIn on those as well.
Amazing. I definitely emphasize everybody. We'll drop the links in the show notes if you want a direct link to all of those amazing resources. Prasanth, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks so much, Holly. Always a pleasure. And I really appreciate you inviting me onto your podcast.